I was 64 when my world collapsed. Up until then, my life was simple, quiet, and full of little routines I loved. I'd been married for over 40 years. My husband wasn't rich, but we got by. We had our rituals, morning coffee, evening walks, Sunday lunches with our daughter. We didn't talk about money much. He handled it. I trusted him. I thought we'd grow old together. But one cold Wednesday morning, he went out to buy bread and never came back. A heart attack. Just like that, my life cracked open. I didn't just lose a partner. I lost the ground under my feet. If you've ever lost someone you built your life around, please share your story in the comments. You're not alone. In the days after his passing, I moved like a ghost. Everything in the house reminded me of him. His shoes by the door, his toothbrush, the cup he always used. It was all still there, but he wasn't. I didn't cry much at first. I was in shock. But then the mail started coming. Bills, insurance papers, bank notices. That's when the fear set in. I realized I didn't know anything about our finances. I had no idea how much we had saved, or if we had saved at all. I didn't even know the password to his email. I went from grieving widow to terrified survivor in a matter of days. The silence in the house grew heavier, and my confidence, it vanished overnight. A week later, I sat at the kitchen table with our bank statement in front of me. That's when I saw it. There wasn't much there. No pension coming. No steady income. Just a balance that was dropping fast. My husband had been covering everything with his work, and now that he was gone, so was our only source of income. I had no job, no skills I thought were useful anymore, and no idea where to begin. I didn't even want to ask for help. What would people think? That I had failed as a woman, as a wife, as a mother? I started skipping meals just to stretch the groceries a few more days. I'd never felt so small. And here's the thing most people won't admit. When you're older and suddenly broke, the shame hits harder than the fear. You start thinking, I should have known better. I should have worked. I should have asked more questions. But life doesn't give you a manual for this. I was scared, yes. But more than that, I was ashamed. I didn't tell my daughter the truth. I pretended I was fine. I told my friends I just needed time. But inside, I was drowning. I know I'm not the only one who's been through this. If you've ever felt ashamed to ask for help, or had to hide how bad things really were, type 1 in the comments. Let's talk about it. Let's break the silence. It didn't take long for reality to hit me full in the face. I assumed I would get a widow's pension, something small at least. But after a few calls and long hours on hold, I learned the truth. My husband hadn't paid into the system like I thought. Years of informal work, a gap in paperwork, and technicalities left me with nothing. No pension, no benefits. Just a formal letter saying I didn't qualify. I stared at the page for an hour. How was that possible? He had worked his whole life. He wasn't irresponsible. But somehow, I had nothing. I felt robbed. If you've ever felt betrayed by a system you thought would protect you, comment below. Tell me how you coped. With no income and no savings, I started looking for help. I went to the local social service office. They handed me a number, and I waited 4 hours to be told they couldn't assist unless I had children under 18. I felt like I didn't exist. Then I tried my church. A few food baskets, yes, but no long-term help. I asked one of my sisters if I could stay with her for a while, just until I figured things out. She said, I wish I could, but it's not a good time. I didn't blame her. Everyone has their struggles. But still, hearing no after working so hard to avoid asking, it broke something in me. I started to feel invisible, like I was becoming one of those people no one really wants to deal with. One day, I took the last of my cash, less than $20, and went to the grocery store. I walked the aisles with my calculator, counting every cent. I put back items I couldn't afford: butter, meat, coffee. At checkout, my card was declined. Twice. I could feel everyone behind me staring. The cashier asked if I wanted to remove something. I nodded, even though I wanted to disappear. I left with a bag of rice, some eggs, and a lump in my throat. That night, I boiled the rice and cried into my plate. I was a grown woman, once a proud wife and mother. Now I was rationing meals. The fall wasn't just financial, it was personal. It stripped away who I thought I was. That week, I began questioning everything. Why hadn't I learned about money sooner? Why had I assumed someone else would always take care of things? I wasn't stupid. I just never thought I'd need to know. I'd built a life around love and trust. And now, I was paying the price for not preparing. But even then, a tiny part of me, just a whisper, began asking a different question. What do you have left? Not money, not youth, not a partner, but maybe time, strength, something? It wasn't hope yet, but it was the beginning of a new kind of thought. If you've ever hit rock bottom and found yourself asking what now, type "I'm here" in the comments. I'd love to hear what got you through. I didn't want anyone to know how bad things had gotten. I started pretending everything was fine. I'd dress up just to walk to the market, smiling at neighbors like nothing had changed. But behind the smile, I was skipping meals, turning off lights to save on the bill, even rationing soap. I stopped answering calls from friends because I didn't want them to hear the heaviness in my voice. I avoided invitations to go out, too embarrassed to admit I couldn't afford a bus ticket, much less lunch. And the hardest part? No one noticed. Or maybe they did, and just didn't want to ask. That silence, it cut deeper than any bill. I felt like I was fading out of the world. There's a certain shame that creeps in when you're older and struggling. People expect you to have figured life out by now. I didn't want to be pitied, or worse, judged. I started cutting corners in ways that made me feel less human. I watered down my milk. I reused tea bags. I washed clothes by hand to save electricity. I even began skipping medication because I couldn't refill it. These weren't just sacrifices. They were slow reminders that I no longer had choices. Every small decision felt humiliating. And yet, I couldn't bring myself to ask for help. Not because I was proud, but because I was afraid people would look at me differently. Have you ever hidden your pain just to protect your dignity? The nights were the worst. I'd lie awake, listening to the silence of the apartment, haunted by thoughts. What if I got sick? What if I couldn't pay rent next month? What if I died here and no one noticed for days? These weren't dramatic thoughts. They were honest fears. I was surrounded by memories, but no longer by a life. I used to love my little home. Now, it felt like a waiting room. I started to feel like I didn't belong anywhere anymore. Not in the workforce, not in social groups, not even in my own skin. Aging without a safety net is lonely. It's not just about money. It's about identity, about being seen. If you've ever gone through a moment where you felt invisible, where your struggle went unnoticed or unspoken, please write about it in the comments, even just a sentence. Sometimes sharing it out loud is the first step toward healing. Type 2 if you've ever worn a mask just to get through the day. I promise, someone reading is going through the same thing. Let's be that reminder to each other. You are not alone. You are still here. You are still worth something, even if the world forgot to say it. It started with a moment so small, I almost missed it. I was sitting at the bus stop, tired and hungry. watching people go by. A young woman beside me dropped her phone. I picked it up and handed it back. She smiled and said, "Thank you, ma'am. You're so kind." That tiny sentence, just 5 words, hit me like a wave. I hadn't heard anyone call me kind in months. Not useful, not smart, not needed. Just kind. It reminded me I still had value, even if I had no money. I walked home thinking, maybe I still have something to offer. Not a job, not a big plan, but something. A seed of worth that hadn't died after all. That night, I sat on my bed and made a list. Not of what I'd lost, but of what I still had. My health, more or less. My hands, my voice, a bit of energy in the morning. I remembered how I used to enjoy sewing years ago. Nothing fancy, just little mending jobs for neighbors. I didn't have fabric, but I had an old kit of needles and thread. So I fixed a hole in one of my own shirts, and something strange happened. I felt proud. It was the first time in months I'd done something that made me feel capable. That small act lit a tiny fire in me. It wasn't much, but it was mine. The next morning, I looked around my apartment with new eyes. I found 2 pillowcases that were worn out, and I turned them into little cleaning cloths. I cleaned the kitchen, reorganized the drawers, and suddenly I had an idea. Maybe I could offer to do small mending for neighbors. Hem pants, patch clothes, repair zippers. Just a few jobs here and there. I wrote a sign on a piece of cardboard. Need help mending clothes? I can help. I taped it near the front entrance of my building. I didn't expect anything, but deep down, I was hoping. Hoping someone would see it. Hoping someone would see me. Have you ever had a moment that felt small, but ended up changing everything? Maybe a kind word, an idea, a memory, or even a quiet decision you made one night? If so, share it in the comments. I'd love to read your spark, your turning point. Type 3 if you believe even the tiniest habit can lead to a new life. That's what happened to me. And in the next part, I'll tell you how this tiny habit, this daily ritual I almost didn't start, became the foundation of my freedom. The first time someone knocked on my door because of that little cardboard sign, I nearly cried. It was my upstairs neighbor. She said, "I heard you can sew. Could you fix the hem on my skirt?" My hands trembled as I took the fabric. I hadn't worked for anyone in years, but I sat down, thread in hand, and did what I knew. It took me an hour. When I gave it back, she smiled and handed me a $10 bill. $10. It wasn't much, but to me, it felt like winning the lottery. That night, I slept for the first time in weeks without dread. I had earned something. I had used my hands. I had hope. So I made it a habit. Every morning, before the world woke up, I sat by the window with my sewing kit. Even if no one came that day, I stitched something. An old button, a loose thread, a broken zipper. It became my ritual. I started leaving early in the mornings to drop flyers at the bakery, the pharmacy, the community center. Simple repairs, quick and careful. Ask for Mrs. H. Slowly, people began to notice. Some paid me in cash, others in bread, fruit, or even bus passes. It didn't matter. What mattered was that I felt useful again. This wasn't just about sewing. It was about rebuilding the woman I thought I'd lost. One day, a young woman brought me a bag of clothes needing repairs. She said, "You're a blessing to this neighborhood." I didn't know what to say. I wasn't used to compliments anymore. But her words stayed with me. I realized that this little habit, something I started out of desperation, had grown into something bigger. I had regular clients now. I knew people by name again. I wasn't just surviving, I was contributing. With each stitch, I was stitching myself back together too. I'd lost everything, but through one small habit, I had started building a new version of freedom. Not flashy, not perfect, but real. If there's something you used to love doing, even if it feels small, try going back to it. You never know what door it might open. Maybe it's not sewing for you. Maybe it's cooking, gardening, fixing things, writing letters, or just listening to others. Sometimes the habit that saves us is the one that reminds us we still have purpose. Comment below. What habit or hobby makes you feel alive again? Type 4. If you believe purpose doesn't come from age, it comes from action. It didn't happen overnight, but little by little, I started earning enough to cover my basic needs. I could buy fresh bread again. I could refill my prescription. I even put a few coins in a jar each week just to see it grow. One afternoon, I realized I had gone a whole month without asking anyone for help. That was a huge moment for me. I stood in my kitchen, holding a receipt from the grocery store I had paid in full, and I cried. Not because I was sad, but because I finally felt like I could breathe. I had created something out of nothing. That feeling of taking control again, even in a small way, was priceless. People began to treat me differently, too. At first, I thought it was just in my head. But then I started hearing things like, "You're always busy these days," or "You're so good with your hands." One neighbor even said, "You've become the heart of the building." That one made me tear up. I hadn't felt seen in a long time. And now, people not only saw me, they depended on me. It was strange, in a beautiful way. I wasn't invisible anymore. I had something to offer, and people appreciated it. That feeling gave me strength I didn't know I had. I stood taller. I smiled more. I laughed again. Soon, I began expanding a little. I learned how to post in local Facebook groups. My granddaughter helped me create a simple page. I even started getting calls from people in nearby neighborhoods. Nothing fancy, just word of mouth and honest work. My hands got stronger. My eyes got sharper. I found joy in details again. I even made a little routine. Tea at 7, stitching from 8 to noon, lunch, then rest. That structure gave my days meaning. I had purpose again, and it didn't come from a big job or miracle. It came from the habit I built day by day. That's what made the difference. If you've ever had something small turn into something beautiful, even when no one believed in it but you, tell me about it. I read every comment, and your story might be the one that gives someone else courage. Type 5 if you've ever surprised yourself with your own resilience. You don't need to be young, rich, or lucky to rebuild. Sometimes you just need a reason to start, and the guts to keep going. It's strange how freedom doesn't always look like what you imagined. I used to think freedom meant big things: traveling, retirement, no more worries. But now, freedom means I can pay my rent. It means I can buy my own groceries without fear. It means I don't have to ask anyone for anything unless I choose to. That's powerful. I wake up each morning and decide what I want to do. No more waiting for a miracle or for someone to come save me. I became my own answer. And it all started with one habit: just sitting down with a needle and thread, doing what I could with what I had. That's what saved me. That's what set me free. People often say, "You're so lucky you figured it out." But luck had nothing to do with it. It was discipline. It was faith. And honestly, it was a bit of desperation, too. I still don't have a big income. I don't own much. But what I do have now is dignity. I can hold my head up high. I can look in the mirror and be proud of the woman I see. She's not broken anymore. She's rebuilt. She's wiser, stronger, and softer, too. Because going through the fire didn't harden me. It humbled me. And in that humility, I found peace. Real peace. The kind that no money can buy. I've started helping others too. Sometimes I teach basic sewing to younger women in the neighborhood. Other times, I just sit and listen to someone who needs to talk. I know what it's like to feel invisible. That's why I make sure to really see people now. One woman told me, "You helped me believe in myself again." I cried when she said that because I knew exactly what she meant. This habit that started in silence and survival turned into a life of connection and purpose. I didn't expect that. I just wanted to survive. But life had more waiting for me. Once I made room for it. If you've ever rebuilt yourself, piece by piece, quietly, stubbornly, please share your story. Someone out there needs to hear it. Type 6 in the comments if you believe freedom isn't given. It's earned. No matter your age, your losses, or your starting point, there is always a way back to yourself. I'm living proof. And if I could do it, with nothing but time, thread, and a little hope, you can too. If you've listened to my story this far, thank you. Truly. I never thought I'd be the kind of person to share something like this online. But I've learned that silence doesn't protect us. It isolates us. I spent too long ashamed of where I was. I thought asking for help or admitting I'd fallen was weakness. But it's not. It's strength. Telling the truth, even just to yourself, is the first real step toward freedom. I didn't need to be rescued. I needed to believe that I wasn't finished yet. And neither are you. No matter how lost you feel today, your story isn't over. You still have something to offer. Something the world needs, even if the world has forgotten that. You don't have to start big. You don't need a perfect plan. You just need one small habit that reminds you who you are. Mine was sewing. Yours might be different. But the principle is the same. Do something with your hands, your heart, or your voice. Something real. Something you can build on. Something that says, "I'm still here." I want you to believe that your best days aren't all behind you. Maybe they're different now. Maybe they look smaller from the outside. But inside, they can still feel huge. Joy, dignity, peace, connection. These things don't belong to the young. They belong to the living. And you are still alive. If you relate to anything I've said today, I'd love to hear from you. Share your story. Ask your question. Tell me what habit helped you rebuild. Or type, "I'm ready," if you're still searching but willing to try. This community is for all of us, especially those who've felt forgotten, invisible, or left behind. Let's remind each other that there is strength in starting small, that healing comes in layers, and that you don't need to have all the answers to take the first step. I'll be here, reading your comments, cheering you on from wherever I am. And if this story moved you, if it reminded you of your mother, your sister, or even yourself, please consider sharing it. Someone out there is sitting in silence, just like I was, wondering if it's too late to start over. Let this be their sign. Hit subscribe if you want more stories like this. Turn on notifications so you don't miss the next chapter. And never forget, you are never too old, too poor, too lost, or too broken to begin again. I'm not special. I'm just someone who got tired of waiting for change and started sewing it together with my own hands.